Hello, and welcome. My name is Joey, and today we are going to be doing a deep dive into one of my favorite songs in the soundtrack to the 2006 Game Boy Advance game, Mother 3. The song is called Mind of a Thief, and it was composed by Shogo Sakai. Before we get into it, just want to say, if you like this kind of video, let me know, leave a comment, maybe subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined. Helps me out and will definitely help me make more videos like this in the future. Let's listen to the song. Oh man, that's so good. So the song starts with a couple of measures of solo drums, which I always thought was really kind of cool and unique. And it reminds me a little bit of the style that I think this song is kind of going for, which is sort of like 60s pop and rock music. Like there's definitely like a handful of songs I can think that start kind of similarly. But one in particular, actually, there's a Beatles song called What You're Doing off their album Beatles for Sale that pretty much has the exact same intro. I'll play it so you can hear. So you hear that boom, chop, boom, jabba jab, right? Now listen to Mind of a Thief. See, same thing. I mean, in Mind of a Thief, it's played on slightly different drums. There's a little bit more hi-hat, and the snare's a little punchier, but it's the exact same pattern. So good. So the bass is actually really prominent in this song, really up in the mix, and there's a couple of reasons for that, I think. The first being that most composers on the Game Boy Advance were expecting or were kind of working around the limitations of the Game Boy's really tiny, tinny speakers, so they would always boost the bass and make it a little bit more trebly just so that it would really cut through on those really tiny speakers. But the other reason I think the bass is so prominent here is that Mind of a Thief is sort of a de facto theme song for one of the game's main characters, Duster, and he's actually a bass player at one point in the game, and all of his attacks in the game kind of make a little bass sound effect. But funnily enough, I don't really think it's the bass that's really crucial to this song's sound. It's actually the acoustic guitar. Take a listen real quick to the start of the A section. So what you're hearing there is a little bit unusual for game music, and to explain why, I need to talk a little bit about how acoustic guitars are typically sampled in retro games. The acoustic guitar is not exactly uncommon in retro game music. Off the top of my head, I can think of like a couple of Final Fantasy town themes that sound kind of like... right? But the key thing is that they're all parts like that. They're all these single note arpeggio parts, and the reason is that digital instruments are typically sampled one note at a time. If you play on like a MIDI keyboard, for example, you press this note, you get one note on whatever instrument you're playing. And the problem with acoustic guitars is that, yes, you can play acoustic guitars like that, but a lot of the time acoustic guitars are used for this. Strumming. Now, you really can't simulate the sound of a strum accurately by taking single note samples and just kind of stacking them. You can kind of do it. I can think of one song from Final Fantasy VI, Shadow's theme, that does something like that. The interesting thing is that what Mother 3 did was they actually sampled acoustic guitar strums. So rather than having a bunch of acoustic guitar samples doing that, they actually sampled that for multiple different kinds of chords. And then that's what gives you this kind of actual acoustic guitar strum sound in so much of Mother 3's soundtrack, including here. So take a listen to just what the acoustic guitar sounds like in Mind of a Thief. Right? So it's kind of like... right, something like that. So it's actually an acoustic guitar. And that's one thing that's so cool to me about Mother 3's soundtrack, because it uses these acoustic guitar samples constantly. And that's one of the other things that really reminds me of just kind of like 60s pop music, or like kind of early 70s, where the acoustic guitar was a really prominent element of the rhythm section. Great melody. But I want to quickly point out something about the flute that's playing it. One of the reasons the melody sounds so good in the song is that the flute samples actually have a bit of a delay effect on them, which is something I actually talked about in my recent video essay on Link's Awakening.
Which you should definitely check out.
But the basic gist is that old game consoles only had a few channels to work with and very, very few effects that they could apply to any instruments. But one way you could get around that was by using multiple channels for just one instrument. So the flute is actually taking up 3 channels, one main channel and 2 kind of echo channels that make it sound huge. So this is what it sounds like without the echo. And this is what it sounds like with the echo. Just makes it sound so huge, right? Of course, nowadays it would be trivial to get that kind of effect, but it's really, really cool to me how old game composers used to use these kinds of tricks and workarounds to get those kinds of effects within the limited hardware. It's kind of a lost art in a way. So most of the harmony in this first part of the A section is pretty standard. You got 2 measures of F, then D minor 7, G, E, A minor 7. Really, really simple kind of 2-5, 3-6, 2-5 type stuff. Very, very kind of standard jazz changes. It is cool to me how the song starts with 2 measures of F, even though we're in the key of C. And you can tell we're in the key of C because pretty much all the chords kind of gravitate towards C. Like every time I listen to this song, this F chord always has a lot of tension in it to me. And I feel like that's because of the melody, because the melody is playing this. This note, this E natural, really, really prominent in the melody. And that's the major 7 on an F chord, which is a pretty tense note on an F chord. It's the most tense note on an F major 7 chord, and it just kind of makes the chord feel a little bit unresolved, a little bit unstable. So even though it's the first chord we hear in the song, it doesn't feel like our home key. And then of course we get this 2-5 in C, 3-6, and then a big 2-5. Da, 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 da. All right, so then we're home, very clearly in the key of C. So the second part of the A section is very similar to the first, just a couple little differences here and there. So instead of going back to the F chord after that C, we go here, which is E7 to A minor, which kind of tonicizes A minor a little bit in that moment. We've heard it before in the song. Typically in the key of C, an E chord would be minor, but if you were to make it major, or make it a dominant 7, it pulls more strongly to the A minor chord, which comes next. That's what we call a secondary dominant. My favorite thing is this turnaround into the B section, which is this E minor, E flat major 7, D minor 7, G7. So this move here, really, really cool chromatic move, adds a lot of tension, a lot of interest. And then we get to this big 5 chord, right? This big G7. And this G7 just really, really wants to go to C, right? Like you're just expecting, your ear is expecting this. Instead of going to C, he goes to G minor in the start of the B section. Really, really cool move. Very, very subtle modulation into a different key, just going to the minor there. Oh man, that's so cool. We first start with this modulation here on this G minor chord. And we're kind of in the key of D minor because the first 3 chords we hear are this. Right, so it kind of feels like it's resting at D minor. But then right after that, he gives us this. This 2-5 in the key of E flat. So you get F minor to B flat 7, which is really strange. Now, another modulation. And then right after that, instead of resolving to E flat, he goes down to A minor, right? Then you get this kind of cool bass movement with the A minor chord where A, G, F sharp. So you'd think with all these modulations and borrowed chords, this section would sound jarring, but it really doesn't. And I think that's mainly just because the melody is so strong. Like this, like it's kind of the same structure, just moves down a whole step. So that melody really just kind of guides you through the harmony, and it really just sounds beautiful in context. I love that. So the end of the song is just this really, really long F chord, right? And there's just so much tension in that F chord. Like, it just feels like, oh, it wants to go somewhere. But then it's so interesting because when it loops back to the A section, it just resolves back to another F chord. So, final thoughts? This song is just great. I mean, it really, really exemplifies what's so great about Mother 3's soundtrack to me, which is that the soundtrack really authentically replicates so many different kinds of styles of music, right? Like, Mother 3's soundtrack has, like, Latin songs, it has songs that sound like Beethoven, it has hard rock, it has, like, metal songs, then it has songs that sound kind of like 60s pop or like 60s rock music, and it recreates them so authentically, and especially on the GBA sound hardware. To pull that off is really, really cool and really, really special. And this song is no exception. Like, if you recorded this with real instruments and like did a whole production, it would stand up with the very best of songs in this style. Which, incidentally, I'll be doing very soon. I'm going to be releasing a cover of Mind of a Thief on this channel, hopefully within the next week or so. Depends on when I'm able to get it recorded. But I'm hoping to get it done soon, so be sure to stick around if you want to see that. Subscribe, and definitely let me know what you thought about this video. Give me some comments, any feedback at all. This is kind of new for me. I'm not used to talking to a camera like this. Had a lot of fun making this, and hopefully I'll be able to make some more like this in the future. So, until next time, goodbye.